So let's start with chapter 5, Kingdoms, Kings and Early Republic. Election day. Shankaran woke up to see his grandparents all ready to go and vote. They wanted to be the first to reach the polling booth. Why, Shankaran wanted to know. Were they so excited? Somewhat impatiently, his grandfather explained, "We can choose our own rulers today." Yes, children, we have that right. We, as a citizen of India, we have that right to choose our rulers. Now, how some men become rulers? Choosing leaders or rulers by voting is something that has become common during the last 50 years or so. How did men become rulers in the past? Around 3000 years ago, some men became recognized as Rajas by performing big sacrifices. The Ashwamedha or horse sacrifice was one such ritual. A horse was let loose to wander freely and it was guarded by the Raja's men. If the horse wandered into the kingdoms of other Rajas and they stopped it, it means they had to fight. But if they allowed the horse to pass, it meant that they accepted that Raja who wanted to perform the sacrifice was stronger than them. These Rajas were then invited to the sacrifice, which was performed by specially trained priests who were rewarded with gifts. The Raja who organized the sacrifice was recognized as being very powerful, and all those who came brought gifts for him. The Raja was a central figure in these rituals, obviously as he is powerful than others, so he was the central figure in these rituals. He was above them all. He often had a special seat, a throne, or a tiger skin. His charioteer, who was his companion in battlefield and witnessed his exploits, chanted tales of his glory. Chanted tales of his glory means how he fought, how he won the war. He always used to praise him. His relatives, especially his wives and sons, had to perform a variety of minor rituals. The other Rajas were simply spectators who had to sit and watch the performance of the sacrifice. Priests performed the rituals including the sprinkling of sacred water on the king. The ordinary people, the Vish or Vaishya, also brought gifts. However, some people, such as those who were regarded as Shudras by the priests, were excluded from many rituals. They were not allowed to enter such rituals. They were not allowed to see these rituals. Or you can say they were not allowed to be a part of such rituals. Now, what are Varnas? There are four special categories, namely Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras. Brahmins were expected to study and teach the Vedas, perform sacrifices and receive gifts. Now all these people have their designated occupations. They were only allowed to do such things only which were meant for them. So these Brahmins were expected to study and teach the Vedas, perform sacrifices and receive gifts. Kshatriyas were expected to fight battles and protect people. The word Kshatriya in Hindi means a person who fights and wins. Vaishyas. Vaishyas were expected to be farmers, herders and traders. The Shudras were expected to serve the other three groups. The Shudras were actually the lowest of all of them. Now Janpadas. The Rajas who performed these big sacrifices were now recognized as being Rajas of the Janpads rather than Janas. The word Janpad literally means a land where the Jana sets its foot and settle down. Some important Janpadas are shown on map 4, page 45. You can go through it. This is the page 45 here. See. Important Janpadas: Panchal, Kosal, Gandhar, then Avanti, Magadh, Anga. These are some of the important Mahajanpadas. Now, archaeologists have excavated a number of settlements in these Janpadas, such as Purana Killa in Delhi, Hastinapura near Meerut, and Atranji Khera near Etah. The last two are in Uttar Pradesh. Last two means Hastinapur and Atranji Khera are in Uttar Pradesh. They found that people lived in huts and kept cattle as well as other animals. They also grew a variety of crops: rice, wheat, barley, pulses, sugarcane, sesame, and mustard. Now let's see this on the left. This is the picture of a painted greyware. Plates and bowls are the most common vessels made out of painted greyware. They were extremely fine to touch with a nice smooth surface. And they were actually utensils made of this. And these utensils are only meant for special occasions, for important people, and to serve special kind of food. So whenever the guests used to come, they used to feed on such earthenware. So the people, they made earthen pots. Some of these were grey in color, others were red. One special type of pottery found at these sites is known as painted greyware, which we have already discussed. As is obvious from the name, these grey pots had painted designs, usually simple lines and geometric patterns. You can see here, simple lines and geometric patterns, triangle. Now, Mahajanpadas. About 2500 years ago, some Janpadas became more important than others and were known as Mahajanpadas. Right? Most Mahajanpadas had a special city. Many of these were fortified. Fortified means that huge walls of wood, brick, or stone were built around them so as to protect them. Forts were probably built because people were afraid of attacks from other kings and needed protection. It is also likely that some rulers wanted to show how rich and powerful they were by building really large, tall, and impressive walls around the cities. Also, in this way, the land and the people living inside the fortified area could be controlled more easily by the king. Building such huge walls required a great deal of planning. Thousands, if not lakhs, of bricks or stones had to be prepared. This in turn meant enormous labor provided possibly by thousands of men, women, and children. And resources had to be found for all this. And this also increased the employment. Right? See, you can see the picture here. This is the picture of a wall. This is the fortification wall at Kaushambi. This is a picture of remains of a wall made of brick found near present-day Allahabad. Allahabad is in Uttar Pradesh. A part of it was probably built about 2500 years ago. The new Rajas now began maintaining armies. Soldiers were paid regular salaries and maintained by the kings throughout the year. Some payments were probably made using punch-marked coins. No taxes. As the rulers of the Mahajanpadas were building huge forts, maintaining big armies, they needed more resources and they needed officials to collect these. So instead of depending on occasional gifts brought by people, as in the case of the Raja of the Janpadas, which we have read on the first page, they started collecting regular taxes. Now this was a kind of regular income, not a one-time income. So on what all things they used to collect taxes? Number one, taxes on crops. Then number two, taxes on craftsperson, the people who used to make special kind of crafts. Third, herders paid taxes as animals and animal produce. Then fourth, taxes on goods through trade. Fifth, hunters and gatherers had to provide forest produce to the Raja. Changes in agriculture. There were two major changes in agriculture around this time. One was the growing use of iron plowshares. This meant that heavy, clayey soil could be turned over better than with a wooden plowshare. So this new kind of plowshare was being made so as to get a better yield, right? So this iron plowshare meant that heavy, clayey soil could be turned over better than with a wooden plowshare. This was more powerful, obviously, so that more grain could be produced. Second, people began transplanting paddy. This meant that instead of scattering seeds on the ground from which plants would sprout, saplings were grown and then planted in the fields. This led to increased production as many plants survived. A closer look, Magad. Find Magad on map 4, page 45. See here, you can see page 45. Magad. This is Magad. here on the right hand side. Now, Magad became the most important Mahajanpada in about 200 years. Many rivers such as the Ganga and Son flowed through Magad. This was important for transport, water supplies, making the land fertile. What do you mean by making the land fertile? Fertile means where crops grow easily. More crops are grown. On fertile lands, more crops are grown. Now, parts of Magad were forested. Elephants, which lived in the forest, could be captured and trained for the army. Forests also provided wood for building houses, carts, and chariots. Besides, there were iron ore mines in the region that could be tapped to make strong tools and weapons. Magad had two very powerful rulers, Bimbisara and Ajatasattu, who used all possible means to conquer other Janpadas. Mahapadmananda was another important ruler of this time. He extended his control up to the northwest part of the subcontinent. Rajagriha, present-day Rajgir in Bihar, was the capital of Magad for several years. So earlier, the capital of Magad was Rajagriha or Rajgir, which is in Bihar. Later, the capital was shifted to Patliputra, present-day Patna. Patna is also in Bihar. It is the capital of Bihar. More than 2300 years ago, a ruler named Alexander, who lived in Macedonia and Europe, wanted to become a world conqueror. Of course, he didn't conquer the world, but did conquer parts of Egypt and West Asia, and came to the Indian subcontinent, reaching up to the banks of the river Beas. When he wanted to march further eastwards, his soldiers refused, because they were scared, as they had heard that the rulers of India had vast armies of foot soldiers, chariots and elephants. Now, in what ways were these armies different from those described in the Rig Veda? Children, remember in Rig Veda the armies, they were not very powerful. They don't have all the necessary equipments or weapons, you can say, for the war. But now, at this time, they had vast armies, many and many people, then chariots, elephants, more resources to fight the war. A closer look, Vajji. While Magad became a powerful kingdom, Vajji, with its capital at Vishali, Bihar, was under a different form of government known as Gana or Sangha. In a Gana or a Sangha, they were not one, but many rulers, and each one was known as a Raja. These Rajas performed rituals together. They also met in assemblies and decided what had to be done and how, through discussion and debate. For example, if they were attacked by an enemy, they need to discuss what should be done to meet the threat. However, women, dashas, and kamakars cannot participate in these assemblies. So, only that was the only men-dominated society at that time. This is an account of the Vajjis from the Digha Nikaya, a famous Buddhist book, which contains some of the speeches of the Buddha. These were written down about 2300 years ago. Ajatasattu and the Vajjis. Ajatasattu wanted to attack the Vajjis. He sent his minister named Vasakara to the Buddha to get his advice on the matter. The Buddha asked whether the Vajjis met frequently in full assemblies. When he heard that they did, he replied that the Vajjis would continue to prosper as long as they held full and frequent public assemblies. They met and acted together. They followed established rules. They respected, supported, and listened to elders. Vajji women were not held by force or captured. Chaityas, local shrines, were maintained in both towns and villages. Wise saints who followed different beliefs were respected and allowed to enter and leave the country freely. So, this means this actually means that if they were working as one team, so they will prosper definitely. So they should be working as a team to one or to be superior from others. Now, Rajas of powerful kingdoms tried to conquer the Sanghas. Nevertheless, these lasted for a very long time till about 1500 years ago, when the last of the Ganas or Sanghas were conquered by the Gupta rulers. Now, let's revise some important dates, children. New kinds of Rajas, about 3000 years ago. Mahajanpadas, about 2500 years ago. Alexander's invasion, composition of the Digha Nikaya, about 2300 years ago. End of the Ganas or Sanghas, about 1500 years ago. So we come to the end of this chapter. Thank you.